Have you ever wondered why some people seem to accumulate wealth effortlessly, while others work themselves to exhaustion and still struggle to pay their bills? It's a question that keeps millions awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering where they went wrong. The truth is, you haven't gone wrong. You've simply been playing a game whose real rules have been deliberately hidden from you. Has this ever happened to you? You push yourself harder, work longer hours, take on extra responsibilities, only to watch your bank account remain stubbornly unchanged, while others seem to thrive with seemingly less effort. This isn't coincidence or bad luck, it's by design. In this world we inhabit, effort and reward aren't connected the way we've been told. I've seen countless hard-working individuals, brilliant minds, dedicated workers, honest souls, struggle paycheck to paycheck while watching others who barely lift a finger live lives of abundance and freedom. The system isn't broken. It was built this way. Society has masterfully crafted a narrative that keeps most people trapped in cycles of financial servitude. Work hard and you'll succeed. Put in the hours and you'll climb the ladder. Pay your dues and prosperity will follow. These aren't truths, they're tranquilizers. They're designed to keep you docile, to keep you laboring without questioning why your hard work never seems to translate into real wealth. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. What you're about to discover might surprise you, even shock you. The wealthy elite aren't playing by the same rulebook you are. They're operating on principles that Neville Goddard understood decades ago. Principles that have been deliberately kept from public consciousness because they're too powerful, too transformative. Stay with me until the end of this video, because I'm going to unravel the single most important rule that separates those who accumulate wealth from those who never escape financial struggle. This isn't about getting rich quick. It's about understanding the fundamental law that governs prosperity in our world. The silent rule I'm about to share isn't taught in schools. It's not mentioned in conventional financial advice. Most financial advisors don't even understand it themselves because they too are trapped in the same system designed to keep wealth concentrated in few hands. Now, imagine for a moment that everything you've been taught about creating financial security has been deliberately designed to ensure you never achieve it. Imagine that the very advice meant to help you succeed is actually keeping you stuck. This isn't conspiracy. It's simply the mechanics of a system built to channel wealth in specific directions. The wealthy understand something fundamental about money that most people never grasp. They understand that wealth isn't about working harder. It's about making a profound mindset shift that transforms your entire relationship with money. If these wealth principles resonate with you, hit that subscribe button. I share insights like these that you won't find in conventional financial education, breaking down the hidden rules the wealthy have always understood. Here's the silent rule that creates the dividing line between those who struggle financially and those who thrive. Never trade your time for money. That's it. This single principle, when truly understood and applied, reshapes your entire economic reality. It's the hidden truth that separates those who work until they die from those who build lasting wealth and freedom. When you exchange your hours for dollars, whether you're earning minimum wage or commanding a six-figure salary, you've already lost the game. You've placed an absolute ceiling on your potential wealth because you only have 24 hours in a day. No matter how much you optimize your schedule or how efficiently you work, you cannot expand time. It is the ultimate non-renewable resource. The journey to financial freedom begins when you stop selling your life in hourly increments and start creating systems that generate income, whether you're actively working or not. This fundamental revelation isn't about working smarter. It's about completely redefining what work means in your life. Behind the scenes of every great fortune lies this principle. The world's wealthy don't wake up to alarm clocks. They don't commute through traffic. They don't trade 8 hours for a paycheck. Instead, they build or acquire assets that work for them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's another uncomfortable truth we need to confront. The world doesn't reward nobility or hard work. It rewards those who understand and control the systems of wealth creation. Your dedication, your overtime hours, your exhaustion at the end of the day, none of this translates to wealth unless it's channeled into building something that outlasts your daily effort. This isn't just a financial strategy, it's a complete paradigm shift that impacts every decision you make. When you stop trading time for money, you begin to evaluate opportunities differently. You stop asking, "How much does this pay per hour?" and start asking, "How does this fit into my system of wealth creation?" Most people follow conventional wisdom their entire lives, believing that climbing the corporate ladder or billing more hours will somehow lead to financial independence. But this path leads only to burnout, not breakthrough. The real decisions that shape your financial destiny aren't about working harder. They're about positioning yourself to own the flow of value, rather than merely contributing to it. Your transformation begins with recognizing that everything you've been taught about creating wealth has been designed to keep you in place, working, consuming, and ultimately transferring your wealth to those who understand this fundamental rule. If this resonates with you on a deep level, write in the comments, "I refuse to trade time for money." Now let's examine what happens when we apply this principle to real life. Let's examine what happens when we apply this principle to real life by looking at two distinct journeys. Picture John. He wakes at 5:30 a.m. every morning, rushes through a hasty breakfast, fights through rush hour traffic, and clocks in by 8. For the next 9 hours, he trades his expertise, his creativity, his very life force for a paycheck. At the end of each month, this exchange yields just enough to cover his mortgage, utilities, groceries, and maybe, if he's fortunate, a modest dinner out or a small addition to his savings. But here's the revelation that transforms everything. The moment John stops working, whether because he's ill, exhausted, or simply wants to enjoy his life, his income instantly evaporates. The exchange is brutally direct. No work, no pay. This is the invisible chain that binds millions of people, regardless of their education, intelligence, or skill level. Now contrast this with Sarah. She owns the building where John works. She doesn't wake to an alarm. She rarely visits the property. She may not even know the names of the people laboring inside. Yet every single hour, while she sleeps, while she travels, while she devotes time to her passions, money flows steadily into her accounts. The profound difference is this. John has created a prison of time for money exchange that requires his constant presence. Sarah has orchestrated a system that generates wealth without consuming her life. When she falls ill, her income continues. When she wants to spend a month on a beach in Thailand, her wealth keeps accumulating. When she decides to pursue a new creative endeavor, her financial foundation remains solid. This stark contrast illuminates the hidden truth behind wealth creation. The traditional path we're encouraged to follow, get educated, find a good job, work hard, save diligently, is actually a carefully constructed labyrinth that keeps us forever trading our most precious resource, time, for money that barely sustains us. Behind the scenes of this arrangement is a simple but devastating reality. The worker's mindset sees a job as security, while the wealthy recognize it as the ultimate trap. Employment isn't freedom, it's dependency packaged as opportunity. Your paycheck isn't just compensation, it's the leash that keeps you obediently returning to the same place, performing the same tasks, postponing your actual life for some future date that often never arrives. The impact of this realization can be jarring. You've been told your entire life that hard work leads to success. Yet the evidence around you contradicts this at every turn. The person working 3 jobs barely makes ends meet, while the investor checking portfolio updates twice a month lives in abundance. This isn't about effort. It's about positioning in the economic ecosystem. Your decision point comes when you fully comprehend that your time is finite and irreplaceable. Each hour traded for money is gone forever. If this truth resonates with you, type in the comments, "My time is non-renewable." Let's now explore how the wealthy position themselves differently in this economic game. Let's now explore how the wealthy position themselves differently in this economic game by examining the owner's advantage more closely. The building owner, whether it's an apartment complex, an office tower, or a retail space, creates a powerful economic reality. They don't need to be physically present to generate income. They don't need to know the names of the people whose labor creates their wealth. They don't even need to understand the businesses operating under their roof. Yet money flows to them continuously, deposited automatically into their accounts through the miracle of ownership. This reveals a profound mindset distinction that shapes financial destiny. The poor and middle class sell their lives in pieces. By the hour, by the week, by the project. They receive a single payment for their effort, and once delivered, they must sell another piece of themselves to continue surviving. It's a constant exchange that never builds momentum or creates lasting value. The wealthy, in contrast, focus on building systems, purchasing assets, and controlling value flows that continue generating returns long after their initial involvement ends. They understand the breakthrough concept that Neville Goddard emphasized in his teachings. True freedom comes not from your labor, but from your ability to create structures that labor for you. Behind this revelation lies a fundamental truth about value creation. When you work for an hourly wage, you are paid once for your effort. When you build or acquire an income-producing asset, you set in motion a perpetual value machine that pays you indefinitely. This isn't just a financial strategy. It's a complete transformation in how you perceive your relationship with work, time, and money. The journey from employee to owner doesn't happen overnight. It requires a deliberate shift in how you allocate your resources. While the worker spends their paycheck on liabilities, things that take money out of their pocket, the owner channels their resources toward assets, things that put money into their pocket month after month, year after year. Consider the impact of this distinction over a lifetime. The employee trades 40 years of their life for a series of paychecks that evaporate as quickly as they arrive. The owner spends perhaps 5 to 10 years of focused effort building or acquiring assets that then generate income for decades, potentially even for generations after they're gone. This isn't about avoiding work. It's about ensuring your work creates lasting value rather than temporary income. It's the difference between building a sandcastle that washes away with the tide and constructing a stone fortress that stands for centuries. Both require effort, but only one creates enduring results. The revelation here isn't just financial, it's existential. When you stop selling your life in hourly increments, you reclaim ownership of your time, your creativity, and ultimately your destiny. If this perspective is shifting something fundamental in how you view work and wealth, comment below with "I'm building assets, not selling time." Let's examine the historical patterns that confirm this principle. let's examine the historical patterns that confirm this principle through the lens of wealth creation across centuries. When we study the great fortunes of history, the merchant families of Venice, the banking dynasties of Florence, the industrial titans of America, or today's tech billionaires, a profound revelation emerges. None of these immense fortunes were built by people who simply worked harder than everyone else. The hidden truth behind every dynasty, every empire, every significant fortune is this: they were created by individuals who built systems that worked harder than everyone else combined. The Venetian merchants didn't row their own ships. They created trading networks that spanned continents. The Medici didn't count their own coins. They established banking systems that financed kingdoms. Modern tech billionaires don't code every feature. They create platforms that harness the creativity and labor of thousands. Subscribe to join our community of forward thinkers who are applying these prosperity principles in their lives. Every video reveals another layer of the wealth-building knowledge that transforms followers into leaders. This historical pattern shatters one of the most persistent and damaging mindset traps in our culture, the grinding illusion. Most people remain captive to the belief that if they just put in more hours, take on more responsibilities, or push themselves harder, they'll eventually break through to wealth and freedom. Hustle harder has become the mantra of a generation desperately trying to work their way to prosperity. But the transformative journey to wealth requires recognizing that this path leads only to exhaustion, not elevation. Behind the inspirational social media posts about 4 a.m. wake-ups and 80-hour work weeks lies a devastating reality. Grinding harder within a system designed to extract your time for money is like trying to escape quicksand by struggling more violently. Every movement only pulls you deeper. The wealthy elite understand this perfectly. In fact, they count on the majority remaining trapped in this illusion. They want you to believe that your dedication and overtime will eventually be rewarded because it keeps you productive, compliant and, most importantly, too exhausted to recognize the game being played. The true impact of this revelation isn't just financial, it's psychological liberation. When you understand that no amount of harder work within the time-for-money paradigm will create wealth, you stop blaming yourself for not being enough. You recognize that the system itself, not your effort, is the limiting factor in your financial growth. This doesn't mean effort is irrelevant. Rather, it means your effort must be directed toward building systems that work for you instead of you working for systems that enrich others. The most powerful personal transformation begins when you shift your focus from working harder to designing smarter structures that capture and deliver value even when you're not present. The elite don't just know this principle, they live by it religiously. They may project images of constant work and dedication, but behind the scenes, their actual focus is on ownership, control, and systems that multiply their impact far beyond what any amount of personal labor could achieve. If you're seeing these wealth patterns with new clarity, write in the comments, "I see the system now." Let's explore what happens when a young man approaches power with the wrong mindset. Let's explore what happens when a young man approaches power with the wrong mindset through a revealing story that illuminates this principle perfectly. There once was an ambitious young man who approached a powerful duke seeking employment. Standing before the nobleman, he made what he thought was an irresistible offer. "I'll work harder than anyone else in your service. I'll arrive earlier, stay later, and outperform everyone." The young man believed his dedication would be the key to advancement and eventual wealth. The Duke smiled knowingly and delivered a truth that would forever change the young man's perspective. "That's precisely your mistake. The harder you work for me, the richer I become. If you truly want to be wealthy, you must make others work hard for you." In that moment, the facade of meritocracy crumbled, revealing the blueprint of power that has operated throughout history. This insight illuminates the hidden architecture behind wealth creation. The revelation here isn't that hard work has no value, it's that the orientation of that work determines who benefits from it. When you work hard for someone else, you enrich them. When others work hard within systems, you control. You create enduring wealth for yourself. The journey to financial independence requires a fundamental shift away from seeing wealth as the product of effort and toward understanding it as the result of structure. This distinction changes everything about how you approach your financial future. The poor and middle class build their lives on shifting sands, trading irreplaceable hours for dollars that disappear as quickly as they arrive. They focus on income, a temporary flow that stops the moment they stop working. The wealthy, by contrast, architect durable wealth-generating machines. They focus on building and acquiring assets that produce consistent cash flow, whether they're actively involved or not. They understand what Neville Goddard taught, that imagination creates reality, especially in the realm of financial structures. They imagine systems of wealth and then manifest them through deliberate action. This structural approach to wealth reveals why so many hard-working people remain financially vulnerable despite decades of dedicated effort. They've been building someone else's fortress while living in tents themselves. The transformation comes when you redirect your creative energy toward constructing your own wealth-generating systems rather than powering someone else's. Behind the scenes of every fortune is this architectural mindset. The wealthy don't just accumulate money, they design structures that naturally attract and generate it. They build businesses that operate without their direct involvement. They acquire properties that produce rental income. They create intellectual property that pays royalties. They invest in assets that appreciate and produce dividends. The impact of this realization is profound. When you understand that wealth comes from structure rather than effort alone, you begin to evaluate every hour of your day differently. You ask not just, "How much will I be paid for this?" but "Is this building something that will pay me indefinitely?" If this architectural perspective on wealth is reshaping your thinking, comment below with "Building my wealth machine." Let's examine why the wealthy are so focused on acquiring specific types of assets. Let's examine why the wealthy are so focused on acquiring specific types of assets, revealing a pattern that most people completely overlook. Have you ever wondered why billionaires and successful investors constantly acquire more real estate, stocks, companies, and intellectual property? It's not because they need another hobby or because they're driven by greed. It's because they understand the fundamental advantage these assets provide. They keep generating income even when their owner is sleeping, traveling, or focusing on something entirely different. This revelation transforms how you view money itself. When you purchase an asset that produces income, you're not just buying a thing. You're buying a stream of future cash flow. You're buying financial freedom in installments. You're buying something that works for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without complaint, without vacation days, without sick leave. The journey toward wealth begins with recognizing the profound difference between assets and liabilities. Assets put money in your pocket month after month. Liabilities take money out. The poor and middle class spend their paychecks primarily on liabilities: cars that depreciate, clothes that wear out, entertainment that provides momentary pleasure, but no lasting value. The wealthy direct their resources toward assets that continually replenish and expand their wealth. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's a sobering truth about the nature of work itself that most people never confront until it's too late. Each day you trade for a paycheck represents selling a piece of your life that you will never, ever get back. Those hours are gone forever. The laughter you missed with your children, the adventures you postponed, the creative projects you abandoned, the relationships you neglected while earning just enough to survive, the devastating realization that many come to in their 60s and 70s is that they've sold decades of their lives piece by piece, hour by hour, only to discover that they've run out of time before they've accumulated enough money to actually live as they wished. The transformation happens when you grasp that your time isn't just valuable, it's irreplaceable. The wealthy understand this truth. Early, they focus their initial years on building and acquiring assets specifically designed to purchase their freedom from the time for money trap. They make temporary sacrifices not to earn more but to own more. More sources of income that don't require their presence, more systems that generate wealth automatically, more assets that appreciate while they focus on living fully. Behind the scenes of every wealth journey is this fundamental decision: will you continue selling pieces of your life until there's nothing left to sell, or will you build something that pays you indefinitely without consuming your limited time on earth? This isn't just about money, it's about reclaiming your life itself. The hidden truth is that the rich don't just have more money than everyone else, they have more time. They've purchased their freedom by understanding and applying this principle early and consistently. If you're feeling the weight of this reality, comment below with, "Time is my most precious asset." Let's now explore the critical choice that determines which side of this divide you'll ultimately find yourself on. Let's now explore the critical choice that determines which side of this divide you'll ultimately find yourself on. At some point in your financial journey, you'll face a fundamental decision that most people never even recognize as a choice. Will you remain the worker, or will you become the owner? Will you continue giving away your precious, irreplaceable hours? Or will you build something that pays you consistently whether you're physically present or not? This decision point marks the dividing line between the financial trajectory of the masses and that of the truly wealthy. It's a threshold that most people will never cross, not because they lack the intelligence or even the resources, but because they lack the awareness that this choice even exists. They've been conditioned to believe that their only path forward is climbing someone else's ladder rather than building their own. The transformation happens when you recognize that this choice isn't just financial, it's philosophical. It represents a complete paradigm shift in how you view your relationship with money, time, and value creation. The worker mindset sees income as the goal. The owner mindset sees income-producing assets as the goal. This subtle distinction leads to radically different outcomes over a lifetime. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's a troubling revelation about why this choice remains invisible to so many. The established systems of our society, educational institutions, corporate structures, media narratives, and even well-meaning parents unknowingly perpetuate beliefs that keep people small, compliant, and trapped in the worker mindset. The hidden truth behind this agenda isn't necessarily malicious, it's structural. Schools train employees, not entrepreneurs. They teach you to follow directions, meet deadlines, and perform well on standardized assessments, precisely the skills that make you valuable as a worker but not as an owner. Corporate environments reward loyalty and productivity, not independence and system building. Media celebrates the consumption of products rather than the creation of assets. Even parents with the best intentions often pass down the very beliefs that keep their children trapped in the same financial limitations they experienced. Get a secure job. Don't take risks. Save for retirement. These well-meaning pieces of advice reflect the worker mindset rather than the wealth mindset that Neville Goddard and other prosperity teachers have tried to illuminate. Behind the scenes of this societal conditioning is a simple reality. The wealthy don't play by these rules. They write different ones. They teach their children about assets, not just grades. They emphasize ownership, not just employment. They focus on creating systems rather than just performing tasks. They understand that financial education, real education about how money works, happens outside the classroom. The journey to prosperity begins when you recognize that you've been operating within a framework designed to maintain your position rather than elevate it. The decision to step outside this framework, to choose ownership over employment, assets over income, systems over schedules, is the pivotal moment that redirects your entire financial destiny. If you're feeling this shift in perspective, comment below with "Breaking free from the system." Let's explore what happens when you wake up to this reality. Let's explore what happens when you wake up to this reality and truly internalize its implications. The moment of awakening often comes with a jolt, a sudden realization that the path you've been following doesn't lead where you thought it would. True success in our economic system requires something that may feel uncomfortable at first, abandoning noble but ultimately limiting beliefs about hard work, fairness, and merit. This transformation isn't about becoming unethical, it's about becoming strategic. The revelation that reshapes financial destinies is understanding that our economy doesn't reward effort, it rewards control. The person working 3 jobs doesn't become wealthy no matter how much they sacrifice. The person who controls valuable assets, systems, and flows of capital builds wealth even while resting. Neville Goddard understood this principle deeply when he taught that our mental patterns create our material reality. The beliefs you hold about money, work, and value determine the financial structures you create in your life. When you cling to the nobility of hard work within someone else's system, you manifest exactly that. Endless work with limited reward. The paradigm shift occurs when you recognize that control only comes when you stop trading your time for money and start directing your energy toward owning and controlling the mechanisms that generate wealth. This doesn't mean you'll never work hard. The wealthy often work intensely during specific periods. The difference is that their effort goes toward building systems they control rather than powering systems that control them. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic with a question that may cause some discomfort but has the power to create profound change. How much of your irreplaceable life have you already sold through hourly wages? Think about it in concrete terms. If you're 35 and have been working since 20, you've already sold approximately 30,000 hours of your life, hours filled with potential, creativity, and possibility for a series of paychecks that have likely already been spent. The more important question follows naturally. When will you stop this pattern and begin building true wealth? This isn't about quitting your job tomorrow without a plan. It's about making a fundamental decision to redirect your focus from income to assets, from employment to ownership, from trading time to creating systems. This journey of awakening happens differently for everyone. For some, it begins with small investments in income-producing assets while still employed. For others, it means starting a business designed to function without their constant presence. For still others, it means acquiring specialized knowledge or skills that can be packaged into intellectual property that pays repeatedly. The key insight that drives this transformation is recognizing that every hour spent building something you control creates more lasting value than any hour spent working within someone else's system. Your decisions today will either perpetuate the cycle of trading life for money or begin breaking that cycle forever. If this reflection has sparked a commitment to change your approach to wealth creation, comment below with "Starting today, my time works for me." Let's now explore what society secretly hopes you never discover about wealth creation. Let's now explore what society secretly hopes you never discover about wealth creation. Understanding the fundamental rule, never trading time for money, is just the beginning of your journey toward financial freedom. This revelation alone, while powerful, isn't enough to create lasting transformation in your financial reality. Without grasping the deeper principles that protect and expand wealth, you'll inevitably slide back into the very poverty traps you're trying to escape. Many people experience brief moments of financial clarity, maybe even make initial steps toward building wealth, but then find themselves right back in the time for money exchange within months or years. Why? Because knowing the rule without mastering the principles that enforce it is like having a map without knowing how to navigate. The insight without the implementation creates only temporary enlightenment, not permanent transformation. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining the second core principle that the wealthy understand intuitively. Ownership is power. Look around you at the structures of control that shape our society. The landlord owns the building where people live and work. The bank owns the mortgage on your home. The corporation owns the intellectual property you help create during your employment. The government owns a portion of your income before it even reaches your hands. The revelation here isn't just financial, it's socio-political. Every major power structure in our world is built on ownership. Those who own nothing must constantly seek permission from those who own everything. Your entire existence is shaped by what you own versus what you rent, borrow, or access temporarily. This dynamic creates the invisible architecture of power that determines who serves and who is served. Behind the scenes of every financial interaction lies this fundamental truth. Ownership is the ultimate form of leverage. It gives one person control over the resources, time, and options of many others. The person who owns the property can raise the rent, change the rules, or revoke access entirely. The person who rents must comply or leave. This asymmetry of power exists not because of skill, intelligence, or work ethic, but simply because of who holds the deed. What Neville Goddard understood in his teachings about manifestation applies directly here. Your relationship with material reality is determined by what you claim ownership of, not just what you interact with. When you own nothing, you must constantly negotiate for access to everything. When you own assets, systems, and intellectual property, the world negotiates with you for access to what you control. The journey toward financial sovereignty begins when you shift your focus from earning to owning. Instead of asking, "How can I make more money?" the wealthy ask, "What can I own that produces value consistently?" This mindset shift fundamentally alters how you evaluate opportunities, spend resources, and direct your creative energy. This principle explains why landlords sleep soundly while tenants worry about rent increases. It explains why shareholders can enjoy profits without understanding the business operations. It explains why those who own nothing must continuously sell their time to survive, while those who own valuable assets can direct their time toward whatever brings them fulfillment. If this perspective on ownership is reshaping your understanding of wealth, comment below with "Ownership creates freedom." Let's examine how this principle manifests in the lives of two very different entrepreneurs. Let's examine how this principle manifests in the lives of two very different entrepreneurs through a story that perfectly illustrates the power of ownership. In a small town, two ambitious individuals decided to open bakeries. Both were passionate about baking, both had excellent recipes, and both started with similar resources. The first baker, Michael, poured his heart into his craft. He woke up at 4 a.m. every day to prepare the dough, spent hours perfecting his techniques, and served customers with genuine care. His bread was exceptional, and he developed a loyal following. At the end of each month, after paying for ingredients, utilities, rent, and taxes, Michael earned just enough to maintain a modest lifestyle. Despite his dedication and skill, he remained financially vulnerable. One illness, one economic downturn, one rent increase could threaten everything he'd built. The second baker, Sarah, took an entirely different approach. Instead of opening a single bakery, she purchased a building with multiple retail spaces. She leased one space to a baker while renting the others to complementary businesses: a coffee shop, a bookstore, a flower shop. Sarah didn't bake a single loaf herself, yet every month rental payments flowed into her account. As the location became more popular, she raised the rents. When one tenant left, another quickly replaced them. Her income grew steadily while her personal involvement decreased. The revelation in this tale isn't about who worked harder. Clearly, Michael invested more time and personal effort. The transformation happens when you understand that Sarah grasped something fundamental about wealth creation that Michael missed entirely. Ownership creates leverage that labor simply cannot match. Behind the scenes of these two journeys is a profound truth about how financial power operates. Michael owned his labor, his recipes, his daily effort. Sarah owned the physical asset that everyone else needed access to. Michael had to be present to generate income. Sarah's income arrived whether she was present or not. Michael built a job for himself. Sarah built a system that worked for her. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's a psychological dimension that explains why most people follow Michael's path rather than Sarah's. The ownership mindset feels risky, uncertain, and uncomfortable to those conditioned to value security above all else. Most people have been taught to avoid debt, minimize risk, and stick to what they know. These seemingly prudent attitudes often lead directly to the time for money trap. What Neville Goddard recognized in his teachings about prosperity is that your perception of risk fundamentally shapes your financial reality. The poor see ownership as dangerous. They worry about maintenance costs, vacancies, market downturns. The wealthy see ownership as the ultimate security. They understand that controlling the asset is always safer than depending on someone else's asset. This perspective shift completely reorients your approach to wealth building. Instead of asking, "Can I afford this payment?" you begin asking, "How can I control this asset?" Instead of focusing solely on your salary, you focus on what you own, control, and can leverage for ongoing income. If this distinction between owning your labor versus owning income-producing assets resonates with you, write in the comments, "I choose ownership over labor." Let's explore what Neville Goddard understood about this principle that most people miss. Let's explore what Neville Goddard understood about this principle that most people miss. Goddard, in his profound wisdom about manifestation and prosperity, recognized a truth that has shaped empires throughout history. Those who seek true prosperity must control their own assets and fortresses. In his teachings, he emphasized that without ownership, even a leader is merely a servant wearing the illusion of authority, a powerful insight that separates those who appear successful from those who truly are. Goddard understood that physical reality mirrors your consciousness, and ownership is the material expression of sovereignty. When you own nothing, you exist at the mercy of those who do. You may have a title, credentials, even temporary authority, but without ownership of key assets, your position remains fundamentally vulnerable. True power flows not from position, but from possession, control over that which others need or desire. This revelation explains why so many successful professionals, doctors, lawyers, executives, often remain trapped in golden handcuffs despite high incomes. They've mastered their craft, but failed to master the ownership principle. They control their expertise, but not the systems that monetize it. They influence decisions, but don't own the outcome. This subtle but critical distinction determines who ultimately serves and who is served. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining the psychological dimension of ownership that creates such a stark divide between the wealthy and everyone else. There's a fascinating paradox in how people perceive financial risk that determines their entire economic destiny. Most people actively avoid ownership due to perceived danger, preferring what seems like the safety of renting and employment. The transformation in your financial journey begins when you recognize the counterintuitive truth. What appears safe is actually the riskiest path of all. The employee depends entirely on a single income source that can vanish instantly. The renter has no control over their housing costs or security. The consumer watches their wealth disappear with each purchase. Their apparent safety is actually profound vulnerability disguised as security. The wealthy operate from an entirely different paradigm. What appears risky to most, taking on debt to acquire assets, starting businesses, investing rather than saving, they recognize as the ultimate security. They understand that controlling the asset, the business, the property, or the investment creates far more stability than depending on someone else's willingness to employ you or rent to you. Behind the scenes of this mindset distinction is a profound truth about human psychology. Most people make financial decisions based on fear of loss rather than potential for gain. They focus intensely on what could go wrong rather than what could go right. The wealthy, in contrast, calculate risk differently. They fear dependency more than they fear debt. They fear stagnation more than they fear failure. This perspective shift doesn't happen overnight. It requires deliberately reprogramming beliefs about safety, risk, and control that have been instilled since childhood. It means questioning conventional wisdom about good jobs and responsible choices that may actually be keeping you trapped. If you're beginning to see how your perception of risk might be limiting your financial growth, write in the comments, "Safety is ownership, not employment." Let's explore the second principle that most overlook in wealth building. Let's explore the second principle that most overlook in wealth building by distilling it to its essence. The fundamental truth that creates enduring prosperity is remarkably straightforward. Own more. Control more. This isn't just about accumulating possessions. It's about strategically acquiring ownership of income streams, intellectual property, creative works, and eventually the very systems that others depend on for their survival and comfort. This ownership imperative exists for a simple reason that most people never confront. If you don't own the assets that generate wealth, someone else will own you. This isn't hyperbole, it's the hidden architecture of our economic system. Those who own nothing must continuously sell their time, attention, energy, and creativity to those who own everything. The ownership gap doesn't just create income inequality, it creates freedom inequality, opportunity inequality, and ultimately life quality inequality. The revelation that transforms your financial trajectory comes when you redirect your focus from earning more to owning more. Instead of asking for raises, you begin acquiring assets. Instead of upgrading your lifestyle, you upgrade your ownership portfolio. Instead of climbing someone else's ladder, you build structures that others climb while paying you for the privilege. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by introducing the third core principle that operates behind the scenes of every significant fortune. Perception creates reality, especially in the realm of value. This profound insight shifts wealth creation from a purely financial endeavor to a psychological one. The wealthy understand something that the poor and middle class rarely grasp, that value itself exists primarily in the mind, not in material reality. This revelation explains one of the most perplexing aspects of our economic system. Why does one company sell a t-shirt for $10 while another sells a nearly identical shirt for $500? The fabric is similar, the stitching comparable, the basic utility identical. Yet people willingly, eagerly even, pay the premium. The difference isn't in the material, it's in the perception. The journey toward prosperity accelerates dramatically when you understand that wealth isn't just about creating products or services, it's about creating perceptions of value. The rich don't simply sell items, they sell status, identity, belonging, exclusivity, and transformation. They understand what Neville Goddard taught through his emphasis on imagination, that human beings respond more powerfully to the story they believe than to the physical reality they encounter. Behind the scenes of luxury brands, premium services, and high-ticket offerings is this fundamental truth. People don't buy reality, they buy perception. They don't purchase products, they purchase how those products make them feel about themselves and how they believe others will perceive them. This isn't manipulation, it's understanding the actual drivers of human decision-making. The transformation in your wealth-building journey begins when you shift from competing on price, features, or even quality to crafting compelling narratives that shape how others perceive what you offer. If this perspective on value creation is shifting your understanding of wealth, write in the comments, "Perception shapes my reality." Let's examine why luxury brands thrive while budget alternatives struggle despite similar functionality. Let's examine why luxury brands thrive while budget alternatives struggle despite similar functionality. This premium paradox reveals something profound about how value truly works in our economy. Walk through any high-end shopping district and you'll see people eagerly paying thousands for handbags, watches, and clothing items that serve the exact same functional purpose as alternatives costing a fraction of the price. What explains this seemingly irrational behavior? The revelation is that humans don't purchase products, they purchase identities, stories, and emotional experiences. The material difference between a $50 watch and a $5,000 watch often amounts to perhaps $200 in superior materials and in craftsmanship. The remaining $4,650 is pure perception value, what wearing that watch says about you, how it makes you feel when you glance at your wrist, the story you believe others read when they notice it. This isn't an anomaly in our economic system. It's the fundamental operating principle. The wealthy understand what Neville Goddard taught about the creative power of consciousness. The value of anything is established first in the mind, then manifested in material reality. The transformation of your financial journey begins when you grasp that creating value isn't primarily about improving function, but about shaping perception. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because this principle extends far beyond luxury products. We live in what could accurately be called an illusion economy, a system where perception routinely trumps substance in determining monetary value. Celebrity endorsements instantly multiply a product's perceived worth without changing its composition. Influencer marketing creates desire not through improving products, but through associating them with enviable lifestyles. Luxury brands sell ordinary items at extraordinary prices by carefully cultivating an aura of exclusivity and prestige. Behind the scenes of this economic reality is a profound psychological insight. People don't primarily want the thing itself. They want what they believe the thing will make them feel or become. They pay for the transformation they anticipate, not just the physical item they receive. This explains why rational arguments about comparable quality at lower prices often fail to persuade luxury consumers. They're not buying quality, they're buying identity. The journey toward prosperity accelerates dramatically when you shift from competing on features or price to crafting compelling narratives and perceptions around what you offer. This isn't manipulation, it's understanding that humans are meaning-making creatures who value the stories they believe about their purchases as much as the purchases themselves. This revelation completely reshapes how you approach value creation in any business or investment. Instead of asking, "How can I make this better or cheaper?" the wealthy ask, "How can I make this mean more to the people who desire it?" Instead of focusing exclusively on function, they invest heavily in creating and maintaining perception through branding, storytelling, and carefully curated experiences. The hidden truth is that in many markets, improving perception creates far more value than improving the product itself. If this insight about the relationship between perception and reality is changing how you think about value creation, write in the comments, "I now see the illusion economy." Let's explore a striking example of how perception transforms ordinary content into extraordinary value. Let's explore a striking example of how perception transforms ordinary content into extraordinary value through the lens of book publishing. Consider a talented but unknown author who has written a profound novel. Despite its exceptional quality, the book languishes in obscurity, selling only a few copies. The words within, the actual substance of the work, remain unchanged and unrecognized. Then something remarkable happens. Another individual, someone who understands the power of perception, acquires the rights to this book. They redesign the cover with striking imagery that evokes emotion. They craft a compelling synopsis that creates intrigue. They orchestrate appearances of the book in the hands of influential people. They generate buzz through strategic reviews and placements. Suddenly, this same book, with identical words and ideas, begins flying off shelves. It climbs bestseller lists. It generates significant income. What changed? Not the content, not the quality, not the intrinsic value of the words themselves. What changed was purely perception. This transformation perfectly illustrates Neville Goddard's teaching that imagination and perception create our reality, including our financial reality. The revelation here isn't just about book marketing. It's about understanding that in nearly every domain of our economy, the perceived value often matters more than the intrinsic value. The journey toward prosperity accelerates dramatically when you grasp that crafting perception is not a secondary concern, but often the primary driver of economic value. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because this principle extends far beyond commercial products into the very systems that govern our society. Politics itself operates largely as theater, where perception routinely trumps substance. Leaders are chosen not primarily for their wisdom, experience, or capability, but for how strong, decisive, or charismatic they appear. The candidate who projects confidence often defeats the candidate with superior policies. Corporate success follows the same pattern. Companies with mediocre products but masterful marketing routinely outperform businesses with superior offerings, but poor perception management. Merit alone, whether in products, people, or ideas, rarely determines success without the crucial element of perception management. This insight reveals something profound about human psychology that the wealthy have always understood. We respond more to how something makes us feel than to what it actually is. Behind the scenes of every successful brand, political movement, or cultural phenomenon is this fundamental truth that managing perception is often more valuable than improving substance. The transformation in your wealth-building journey begins when you stop assuming that better quality automatically leads to better results and start investing equally in how your offerings are perceived. This isn't about deception, it's about understanding that human decisions are driven by emotion and perception first, with logic and analysis serving primarily to justify choices already made at an emotional level. If this insight about the crucial role of perception in creating economic value resonates with you, type in the comments, "Perception precedes prosperity." Let's now explore how the wealthy apply these principles not just to products, but to their very identities. Let's now explore how the wealthy apply these principles not just to products, but to their very identities. Have you ever wondered why the elite spend enormous sums on their personal image? Why they invest in perfect attire, strategic social appearances, carefully crafted social media, and meticulously designed environments? They understand something profound that Neville Goddard emphasized in his teachings. Perception doesn't just influence reality, it eventually becomes reality. The wealthy invest heavily in image not out of vanity, but strategic necessity. They recognize that once people perceive you as successful, powerful, or influential, they begin treating you accordingly. Doors open, opportunities appear, people extend credit, offer partnerships, and provide resources not based on your actual net worth, but on their perception of your worth and influence. This creates a self-fulfilling prophecy where the appearance of success accelerates actual success. This image investment isn't merely cosmetic, it's foundational to wealth accumulation. When you're perceived as successful, you gain access to networks, deals, and opportunities that remain invisible to those perceived as ordinary. The transformation in your financial journey begins when you recognize that managing perceptions about yourself is as important as developing actual skills or assets. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's an uncomfortable truth about human psychology that explains why perception management is so effective. The masses don't fundamentally want truth. They want compelling narratives that make sense of a chaotic world. This isn't a criticism. It's simply how human cognition works. We are storytelling creatures who naturally organize information into narratives rather than isolated facts. The revelation that reshapes your wealth-building approach is understanding that those who cling exclusively to facts, data, and objective reality often remain invisible and undervalued in our economy. Meanwhile, those who craft powerful stories about themselves, their offerings, and their vision often thrive regardless of objective metrics. The poor man says, "Look at my qualifications." The rich man creates a narrative that makes others say, "We need him involved." Behind the scenes of every significant fortune is this fundamental insight. Stories trump data in the human mind. The wealthy don't just accept this reality, they leverage it deliberately. They craft narratives about their businesses, their products, and themselves that create an aura of inevitability, expertise, or exclusivity. They understand what Goddard taught, that imagination precedes manifestation, and a powerful story in the mind eventually becomes reality in the material world. The journey toward prosperity accelerates when you shift from merely improving your actual circumstances to deliberately shaping how others perceive those circumstances. This isn't about deception, but about understanding that perception creates as much value as substance in our economic system. If this perspective on narrative's power in wealth creation resonates with you, write in the EE comments, "I'm crafting my prosperity story." Let's examine how these principles combine to create the foundation for lasting financial freedom. Let's examine how these principles combine to create the foundation for lasting financial freedom. We've explored three fundamental rules that govern the creation of wealth: never trading time for money, owning assets instead of selling labor, and shaping perception to create value. Together, these principles form the hidden architecture of prosperity that separates those who struggle financially from those who thrive regardless of economic conditions. The first principle, never trading time for money, frees you from the fundamental limitation of selling your life in hourly increments. When you stop exchanging your irreplaceable time for temporary compensation, you break the chains that bind most people to perpetual financial servitude. This shift redirects your focus from income to systems, from paychecks to assets, from immediate gratification to enduring value creation. The second principle, ownership over labor, establishes your position in the economic hierarchy. When you own assets, intellectual property, businesses, or systems that others depend on, you move from serving to being served. This ownership mindset transforms your relationship with risk, stability, and control, revealing that what appears safe to most people, employment, is actually the most vulnerable position, while what seems risky, ownership, creates true security. The third principle, perception creates reality, unlocks your ability to generate value beyond the physical limitations of products or services. When you understand that human decisions are driven primarily by perception rather than objective reality, you gain the power to shape how your offerings are valued in the marketplace. This insight explains why nearly identical products can sell at dramatically different price points, and why image management is not vanity, but strategic necessity. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by addressing the most critical element of transformation: action. These principles, while profound, change absolutely nothing in your life until you begin implementing them. The revelation that reshapes destinies isn't just understanding these concepts intellectually, but applying them deliberately to your specific circumstances. This is where the true dividing line appears between those who remain in financial limitation and those who achieve freedom. You must make a fundamental decision. Will you remain a worker, trading your precious hours for someone else's profit, or will you become an owner, building systems that generate wealth, whether you're present or not? Will you continue following the rules established by others, or will you become a shaper of perception who writes new rules that benefit you? Behind the scenes of every wealth journey is this pivotal moment of decision, the point at which understanding transforms into implementation. Most people experience brief moments of financial clarity, perhaps even make initial efforts toward building assets or systems, but then slide back into familiar patterns of trading time for money. The psychological comfort of the known often pulls them back into limitation, despite their intellectual understanding of these principles. The transformation requires more than knowledge. It demands consistent action aligned with these principles, even when immediate results aren't visible. It requires the courage to step away from societal expectations and the patience to build structures that may not produce immediate rewards, but create lasting prosperity. If you're ready to move beyond merely understanding these principles to actually implementing them in your life, write in the comments, "I choose freedom over security." Let's explore why these principles seem so counterintuitive to most people despite their historical effectiveness. Let's explore why these principles seem so counterintuitive to most people despite their historical effectiveness. There's a comforting myth that many of us have been taught about the wealthy, that they must possess extraordinary intelligence, rare talent, or some inherent superiority that explains their financial success. This belief actually serves an interesting psychological purpose. It protects us from confronting the uncomfortable truth that the difference might be much simpler. The revelation that transforms how you view wealth creation is this: the rich aren't inherently smarter, more talented, or more deserving than anyone else. They simply apply these fundamental principles without hesitation or apology. Where others contemplate, they act. Where others fear ownership, they seize it. Where others accept perceptions, they deliberately shape them to their advantage. This insight is both liberating and challenging. It removes the excuse that wealth is reserved for special people with rare gifts, but it also places responsibility squarely on your shoulders. The wealthy have simply made different decisions consistently over time, focusing relentlessly on ownership and perception management, rather than just working harder within established systems. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining the fundamental split that perpetuates inequality across generations. There's a profound philosophical divide in how people approach wealth creation that determines their financial destiny far more than education, intelligence, or even initial resources. The poor and middle class build their lives primarily on effort, working harder, gaining more credentials, perfecting their craft, hoping that merit will eventually be rewarded. This approach feels noble, ethical, and responsible. The wealthy build their lives primarily on ownership and managed perception. They focus on controlling assets that generate income without their direct involvement and crafting narratives that enhance the perceived value of everything they touch. This approach feels strategic, leveraged, and exponential in its impact. This split isn't just about different strategies. It reflects fundamentally different mindsets about how value is created and captured in our economic system. Behind the scenes of every wealth journey is this philosophical orientation that determines not just what you do, but how you think about every financial decision. The journey to prosperity begins with recognizing which side of this divide you've unconsciously chosen and deliberately shifting your focus from effort to ownership, from labor to assets, from accepting perceptions to creating them. The transformation isn't about working less. Many wealthy people work intensely, but about ensuring your work creates lasting value through ownership rather than temporary income through labor. It's about recognizing that perceptions shape economic reality as much as physical products or services. It's about understanding what Neville Goddard taught that consciousness and imagination precede material manifestation in all domains, including finance. What makes this insight so powerful is that unlike intelligence, talent, or circumstances of birth, this fundamental orientation is entirely within your control. You can begin shifting from labor to ownership, from accepting perceptions to creating them, regardless of your current financial position. If this fundamental shift in perspective resonates with your deeper intuition about wealth creation, write in the comments, "I'm choosing ownership over effort." Let's explore how patience plays a crucial but counterintuitive role in wealth accumulation. Let's explore how patience plays a crucial but counterintuitive role in wealth accumulation. We've established the foundation principles that separate the wealthy from everyone else, but there's a deeper level of wealth creation that few ever discover. Beyond the core principles lie three additional weapons that transform temporary financial gains into enduring empires: patience, leverage, and substitution. These advanced strategies aren't just tactics. They're philosophical orientations toward time, influence, and stability that the poor and middle class rarely comprehend, much less implement. They represent the difference between modest financial improvement and generational wealth that survives economic turbulence and continues growing regardless of conditions. The first of these advanced weapons, patience, seems deceptively simple yet proves remarkably powerful. The revelation that transforms wealth building is understanding that patience itself, when wielded strategically, becomes a devastating competitive advantage. The poor and middle class are trapped in a psychological need for immediate results. They want instant returns, quick promotions, fast growth, and immediate validation. This urgency makes them vulnerable to exploitation and poor decision-making. The wealthy approach time completely differently. They use patience as a deliberate strategic weapon, understanding that timing often matters more than effort. They wait silently for perfect opportunities, study patterns others miss in their rush, and strike with precision when conditions are optimal. This patience isn't passive. It's a highly active state of preparation, observation, and strategic restraint. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because this principle manifests in nearly every domain where wealth is created. Consider investments. When markets crash, the poor panic and sell at devastating losses, unable to endure temporary pain. The wealthy remain patient, often buying more when assets are discounted, then reaping extraordinary returns when markets recover. Their patience transforms market volatility from a threat into an opportunity. In business negotiations, the impatient reveal their desperation through verbal and non-verbal cues, weakening their position. The patient create the impression they can walk away at any time, strengthening their leverage. In property acquisition, the impatient overpay in hot markets. The patient wait for inevitable corrections, acquiring assets at optimal prices. Behind the scenes of every significant fortune is this strategic relationship with time. The wealthy understand what Neville Goddard taught about manifestation, that there's a natural gestation period between setting an intention and its physical realization. They respect this process rather than trying to force premature results. The journey toward prosperity accelerates dramatically when you recognize that impatience itself is a form of poverty, a mindset that consistently transfers wealth from the hurried to the strategic. When you rush, you signal weakness that others exploit. When you can wait, you communicate strength that others respect. This transformation in your approach to time doesn't mean procrastination or passivity. Rather, it means becoming deliberate, strategic, and psychologically comfortable with delayed gratification. It means understanding that while everyone else is chasing immediate returns, the truly wealthy are building positions that will deliver exponential results over time. If this perspective on patience resonates with your intuition about wealth creation, write in the comments, "Patient prosperity is powerful." Let's examine how leverage multiplies the impact of every action you take. Let's examine how leverage multiplies the impact of every action you take. The fishing analogy perfectly illustrates the stark contrast between how the poor and wealthy approach opportunity. Imagine two fishermen at the same lake with different strategies. The first fisherman, representing the impatient mindset, frantically casts his net dozens of times throughout the day. He expends enormous energy, splashing through the water, disturbing the ecosystem, and ultimately catching just enough small fish to justify his effort. The second, fisherman, embodying strategic patience, studies the water carefully, notices patterns in ripples and movements, and waits silently until the perfect moment. Then, with a single, precise cast, he pulls in a harvest 10 times larger than his counterpart's entire day of frenzied activity. This isn't just luck or skill, it's a fundamentally different relationship with time and opportunity. What Neville Goddard understood in his teachings about manifestation applies perfectly here. The outer world reshapes itself to match your inner convictions. The frantic fisherman believes he must continuously act to produce results. The patient fisherman trusts the process, understanding that proper positioning and timing matter far more than quantity of effort. This principle reveals itself dramatically in stock market psychology, where patience transforms from a virtue into a literal wealth-building mechanism. When markets experience inevitable downturns, we witness this divide in stark relief. The poor and middle class, driven by fear and impatience, panic sell their positions, converting temporary paper losses into permanent financial damage. Their psychological need for immediate stability overrides strategic thinking. The wealthy demonstrate a completely different response. Not only do they remain patient during market turbulence, but they often increase their positions, recognizing temporary discounts on valuable assets. When markets eventually recover, as they historically always have, this patience transforms into exponential returns that would have been impossible through any amount of additional labor or income. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because this patience principle extends beyond just waiting passively. Strategic patience involves active preparation during waiting periods. While the poor chase immediate results, the wealthy use periods of restraint to study patterns, build resources, strengthen positions, and prepare for decisive action. There, patience isn't passive. It's predatory, alert, and purposeful. The revelation here is that patience itself becomes a form of leverage, a way to multiply impact without multiplying effort. By waiting for convergent forces to align, you can achieve with one strategic move what others fail to accomplish with hundreds of unfocused actions. This orientation toward time doesn't just preserve energy, it dramatically amplifies results. This journey of transformation begins when you recognize impatience as a poverty trap rather than a virtue. In a culture that celebrates hustle, immediate gratification, and constant activity, strategic patience feels counterintuitive. Yet history shows repeatedly that fortunes are built by those who can wait for optimal conditions rather than forcing action regardless of circumstances. If this principle of strategic timing resonates with your intuition about wealth building, write in the comments, "I'm fishing patiently." Let's explore how the wealthy use leverage to multiply their impact beyond what most believe possible. If you've made it this far with me, you've already demonstrated something powerful about yourself. You're willing to look beyond conventional wisdom to discover the hidden principles that truly govern wealth creation. This journey we've been on isn't just about financial strategies. It's about reclaiming ownership of your time, your creativity, and ultimately your life. I share these insights because I've witnessed their transformative power firsthand. The principles we've explored today, never trading time for money, embracing ownership over labor, shaping perception to create value, and wielding patience as a strategic weapon, have changed countless lives, including my own. If these ideas have sparked something within you, consider joining our community by subscribing to this channel. Each week, we explore another layer of these wealth principles that Neville Goddard and other prosperity teachers have illuminated, but that mainstream financial education often obscures. If this message found you at exactly the right moment in your journey, leave a comment with the words "divine timing" so I know we're connected on this path. And if you found value in today's exploration, a simple like helps others discover these same principles who might be searching for exactly this perspective. Right beside this video, you'll find another one that delves deeper into how to apply these principles in today's digital economy. It's the perfect next step if you're ready to move from understanding to implementation. Click over when you're ready, and we'll continue this conversation there. Remember, the difference between those who remain financially dependent and those who achieve true prosperity isn't intelligence or luck. It's the principles they follow consistently. The choice is yours.